Hey there, my name is Greg, and I am going to give you a quick introduction to one of my personal favorite poets of all time, Jelaluddin Rumi. Now, Rumi was a 13th century Islamic scholar, mystic, and poet. He was born in Balkh in what is now Afghanistan. At the time, in 1207, it was the eastern part of the Persian Empire. And when he was young, his family had to leave Balkh because of threat of a Mongol invasion. They traveled for a long time and eventually settled in what is now central Turkey, in Konya. Now, Rumi's father was a well-respected scholar, Islamic scholar and theologian, and Rumi followed in his footsteps. He traveled all through the region, studying in Mecca, Medina, Damascus, some of the cultural centers of that world. And he came back eventually and took over his father's school after his death. And before the age of 37, Rumi pretty much had a conventional life and was a conventional Sufi Islamic teacher. But then in 1244, something happened to change his life. In 1244, Rumi met Shams of Tabriz. Shams of Tabriz was a mystic, sort of a wandering vagabond dervish. Some accounts say that he was kind of unkempt. But they had this encounter and quickly became friends and established this close personal spiritual relationship that would forever define the rest of Rumi's life. Rumi, in fact, there's a quote attributed to Rumi. He said, "What I had thought of before as God, I met today in a person." He truly felt that he had met the divine in this person of Shams. Well, they had this close spiritual relationship for about 3 years. Then Shams disappeared, and that would prove to be a huge part of Rumi's poetry after the disappearance of Shams. He longed for that relationship, just as he longed for the personal relationship with the divine. And when you dive into Rumi's poetry, it's this longing feeling that really comes out in all of his poetry. He later would have a close relationship with a couple of other individuals, Saladin, blacksmith, who he had another close spiritual relationship with, and then his trusted scribe, Hussam, who actually wrote down much of the poetry that we have today and much of the teachings that we have today from Rumi. But there's a lot of Shams in Rumi's poetry, and as we take a look at some of the poems here, just keep in mind that just think about maybe a person in your life that was so impactful, maybe a teacher, or it could be a grandparent or a really close friend, somebody who just really changed your world, changed your thinking. And just to put yourself in Rumi's shoes and understand he was he was craving this personal, powerful connection with God, and he found it in this spiritual connection with another being, only to have that person disappear. So you take the human longing for personal connection with God, and you add in the fact that you get to experience it with one person, and then they're gone. You can just imagine the amount of loss and grief that would create. Now, a couple of things that are interesting about Rumi's poetry before we go too far into it, into some examples. The pronouns. He uses pronouns in an interesting way, and some of this is lost in translation in terms of taking it from the original language to English. Coleman Barks, write that name down. Coleman Barks has translated much of Rumi's poetry and done an amazing job of introducing him to the Western world, modern Western world. He's actually Rumi's one of the best-selling poets in the U.S. and much of the Western world. But pronouns are not troubling, but it's just a difficult thing to get your head around in Rumi's poetry because you're never quite sure who he's referring to. When he's talking about this longing, is he talking about God? Is he talking about Shams? Is he talking about a lover? He interweaves all of these different terms so much that it's hard to tell exactly who he's talking about. But it kind of gives you that sense of how he dissolves in his awareness of himself. Some of these boundaries just kind of dissipate in his poetry. And it's one of the things that makes it so beautiful and so universal. Because when you read his poetry, it's almost like listening to a really, in in a way, it's kind of like listening to a really good pop song. The you and the I is you can replace those with whatever you need in the moment. You can put yourself into the shoes of the person who wrote the poem. In this case, of course, Rumi. So let's see an example and see if we can kind of get a sense of that. Before we go into these examples, I just want to point out this. I have a well-worn copy of Open Secret. It's a collection of poems by Rumi that was translated by Coleman Barks. It's a great book, and that's where these poems came from. So this first one, I'll just read it and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Like I said before, one of the things about Rumi's poetry that has made him so popular even today is the universality. I really love this last line. It's one of my favorite lines in all of Rumi's poetry that I've read. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter what you're trying to accomplish. If you want an experience with the divine, there are multiple ways to get there. And the divine can be so many things that you personally define for yourself. But it's the universality of this poetry is the thing that first captured me when I was first exposed to it. And I think it's the thing that makes it has made it last through the centuries and the millennia and across so many different cultures. The other thing I like about this poem, he's really saying you have to live life. I think from some of the accounts that I've read, Rumi was getting a little bit I don't know if I'd say fed up, but he found philosophy to be lacking to some degree because he could think about these great thoughts all he wanted, but he was craving that real personal experience of the divine. And here he's telling us, don't just open the door to the study and begin reading. You have to participate. You have to actually make the music with the instrument. I love that. So let's look at another one here. The clear bead at the center changes everything. There are no edges to my loving now. I've heard it said there's a window that opens from one mind to another. But if there's no wall, there's no need for fitting the window or the latch. Now this one I love because he has so many of these poems where he just does a little twist to help you realize there are no boundaries needed. There are ways around that. If we build up these artificial walls, we build up these barriers, but if you don't have those barriers, you don't need a window because there is no barrier. It's a very simple idea, a very simple concept and image, and a very everyday image. He uses everyday images that really resonate with people across the time and across cultures. So one more poem here, and then we'll wrap this up. Do you think I know what I'm doing? That for one breath or half breath I belong to myself? As much as a pen knows what it's writing, or the ball can guess where it's going next. Now to me, this really speaks to the mystic aspect of Rumi's poetry. Mystics want to have this personal experience of the divine. They want to lose the ego and become vessels for the connection between spiritual and earthly. They want to be the conduit. And here he's kind of saying, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just part of this process. I'm trying to open myself up to let this flow through me. Really beautiful stuff. And I highly encourage you to go ahead and go read some more. It's really through the personal reading that you get the gist of what Rumi is saying. It speaks to everybody. He speaks to everybody a little bit differently, but he has these universal themes throughout his poetry that obviously stand the test of time. So that's a quick intro to Rumi. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.